Sounds good. So we are going to open the meeting at 6:30. Please know that this meeting is being broadcast live and digitally recorded. And we'll start as always with open session. Is anybody here for open session? No. So that's nobody here. So why don't we do a couple quick announcements first, and then we'll get into the VSO stuff. All right? Okay.
So just reminding everyone that the Dinghy Dash, which is one of the 5 major events here in town, run by the Special Events Group, is on August 24th. For those who don't remember, people make boats out of cardboard and get in Brigham Pond and try and race across it, which is interesting both for their speed and obviously the sinking. So hoping people sign up for the Dinghy Dash. It's got a full sponsorship more than last year. People are really into it. A lot of people are going to compete again. So it's August 24th. If you don't want to get in the boat, come watch. And then Library 5K is a very successful event every year. This is last year's shirt for those who want to sign up. That's going to be September 7th, rain or shine, starting at the Hubbardston Center School. I've signed up this year, so good luck to everyone else. Just trying to get as many people to. Mark's going to destroy me. So.
Oh, he doesn't run it. No, he's.
Well, you would have destroyed me.
Scott Leslie will this time.
Oh, yes, he will. Every single year. I think this will be my 15th. I haven't actually signed up yet, but I will with my 2 girls. They've run it sort of alternately the last couple of years based on soccer schedules and stuff. But I think this will be my 14th or 15th year, so I got a ton of shirts, which I love. So
look forward to losing to you too.
Okay, sounds good.
You won't lose to me.
I was less confident than you were last year, just so you
Yes.
know. Polar opposite, actually.
I'm getting older.
Okay, sounds good. So are we all? All right, so why don't we jump out of order a little bit? So why don't you sort of introduce us here, Ryan?
Sure. So Sarah Wyman is here with us. She's our new Veteran Service Officer. We went through a pretty lengthy hiring process to make sure we got the right person. So Sarah comes with us from experience in the Air Force, several overseas deployments. She's got all the cred in terms of the veteran world. In addition to, she's matriculating right now for her master's degree in human resources. She's going to be working out of the Westminster office primarily, and then coming to Hubbardston when called, and at least once a month to help with our veterans here. Hit the ground running. Some of you know I did this before. I was explaining something to her. She's like, yeah, I read about that. I got it. So I'm pretty confident in her ability to pick up some of these nuances quickly. So
How do we get the word out to our veterans, sort of, that we're back in business as far as that stuff's concerned?
So I know you have some thoughts on that.
Yes, I do. My outreach is one of my priorities that I wanna expand in that area. From what I've heard, it hasn't been the greatest in the past. So I'm gonna be attending events, and I'm gonna be making flyers, posting on bulletin boards, and doing whatever I can to slowly, insert myself into the community, so to speak. So that's my plan starting off.
Yeah, no, sounds great. We take it pretty seriously.
Right.
We've got our leader is from that background as well. So I'm sure you know all the resources you need to know as far as access wise. But thanks for coming along.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay.
Yeah, welcome, Sarah. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for your
Does
service
the
also.
town have a list of all veterans?
I assume we do.
Yes and no. So veteran status is a voluntary. It's something that you would identify as voluntarily. So there are lists of veterans. You can identify that way on voters lists, etc. But there's no 100% list. So if you don't want to be categorized as a veteran, you don't have to be. But those who are, we do send it out. And our initial plans, our immediate impact plans, will be social media for some of our veterans to use those platforms, and then the website, and then integrating with the senior center and other places where veterans go. Hub House.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. You got something?
Yeah, I was driving on 117 recently, and I noticed, how we have like the Dinghy Dash banners or whatever on all the poles? They have all of their veterans with the years of service in their picture, and I just thought it was really nice. I know it needs funding or whatever, but I didn't know that was something, to honor our veterans in town. And I mean, it went for a long way, and they were really, really nice.
So I've seen that, and I love that.
Yeah, it was really nicely done.
Bolton?
Bolton on 117, yeah, all through the center of town, and has it, it was really nice.
Where, at Memorial Day? During Memorial Day
No.
time period, or just whenever?
It was up now.
Oh, no. Yeah.
just thought it was a nice way to honor them.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome to stay for all the.
Run.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Alright,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thank you, nice to
Thank
meet you.
You too.
Okay, so we're on to new business here, and tonight we have a, why don't you let us know who we've got here?
So, at the board's request, we invited our members from our representatives from the school committee, as well as, a good chunk of the finance committee is posted as well, to discuss, short term, which would be the budget, the FY '20 budget, which is, still up in the air, and then the longer term look at budget assessment and control and how the two sides can work together to make sure the budget process is as smooth as possible. So in the short term,
Hey, can we do a quick introduction thing? So you
Sure.
guys see our names up obviously in front of us here. Would you guys mind if you're school committee or finance committee, could you just introduce yourselves?
Hi, Bill Hanson, School Committee.
Debbie Chamberlain, School Committee.
Mark Wiggler, School Committee.
Susan Rain, Finance Committee. Shannon Erb, Finance Committee.
Josh Larner, Finance Committee.
Chuck Reed, Finance Committee.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for coming.
And did it just happen that you're both on different sides of the room? Is this
Just
a
happened, Al.
predictor of things to come, or?
No.
I hope not.
One town. Okay, all right, sorry, go ahead.
so not everyone is familiar with the processes. So the town of Hubbardston rejected the school committee's certified assessment at town meeting. So did the towns of Hardwick and New Braintree. So under the regional school agreement, if 66% of the towns vote down the budget or reject the budget, then it goes back to the school committee for reconsideration. They can go up, down, or stay the same. They are allowed to reassess based off new information. Then once they vote, they certify that vote through the treasurer, and that's sent to the town, which we have received.
Can I jump in here? Because I went to
Sure.
the meeting. Is this a good time for it?
Sure.
Okay, so last week I went to the school committee meeting, which was, I think, within the time frame necessary to make their next sort of assessment on where to go. They don't have to, as Brian just said, they don't have to go up or down or sideways or whatever else. They just basically have to meet and discuss the fact that the towns, some of the towns didn't vote. Sort of just to set the table. So I was the only representative of there was another, I think, select board member out in the back from one of the other towns there, but I was sort of the only one speaking. So not the school committee necessarily as a whole, but the chair was Lee Wallen and was not thrilled. Probably at all the towns, but specifically we were the first town, and specifically we did not put the school committee's recommended budget on town meeting floor, and he called it, sorry, sort of a slap in the face that we didn't. And you know, my response again, it was sort of 15-on-1, and I wasn't about to pick a fight, but our response was basically that it was going to nuke the town. So that was really our reason why we didn't put it on the town's floor, is because we had, as responsible, you know, representatives of the town and finance committee and all that sort of stuff, is sort of looked at what that assessment was going to do, and we couldn't put it on the floor in good faith. And so that was our effort to sort of get the conversation going, and that's sort of where we're at now. So that was just sort of setting the table there. But as far as sort of moving forward with how things progress, it was a slideshow that sort of went operationally on how many days the school committee had, how many days we have to go to a special town meeting, plus the other towns as well, to vote on, you know, the new assessment that came from the school committee to us within the certain timeframes, and then after that there are additional timeframes as well. But right now we're operating on a 1/12 budget, which is, you know, last year's budget for the school divided by 12, very simple, based on the months of the year. And it's early on in that process, but basically what it comes down to is that if it gets to a point where more than 66.6% vote no on whatever's recommended from the school committee, which is basically 2 towns, we had 3 the last time, but if 2 towns do it, again, I think basically that means that there's not enough time for it to happen again, and so it will ultimately go to the state for their review of all sides of the matter to determine where it goes. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm basically just setting basically the parameters of time frames, I guess, is more than anything is what I was saying there. So that seemed to be generally fine for this discussion. Okay.
4 out of 5 towns have to approve the
4 out of 5 towns have to approve it, and 2 out of 5 approve the original, and now we have our sort of second crack at things to discuss. So, okay.
So the certified amendment from the school committee is down here in the gray box. So in yellow, you'll see the number that was approved by the town of Hubbardston, our town, which was a 5% assessment increase from last year. And just for the sake of confusion, we're talking about the Hubbardston assessment here. There's the overall school committee increase, and then how that divvies down through the formula to Hubbardston. So these numbers are specific to Hubbardston, but every dollar change in Hubbardston changes the overall budget to Quabbin and then filters down to the other towns. So the number here in yellow is what Hardwick voted, which would have been for us a 5.81% increase. And then down here is where the school committee certified their vote, so an increase to Hubbardston of 6.31%, or a total school budget of 4,751,988. So moving to the left side of this spreadsheet, this is what we approved for a total budget. The proposed budget based off of the new school assessment and various changes in personnel that we discussed at Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, and some what I'm calling no-brainer changes, meaning some bills that changed, because when we set the parameters of the budget early in the year, things change, and now we have a much stronger understanding. So stuff that doesn't really require discussion, plus additional state aid, we'll know for sure if this number is real, but we expect it to be, puts our current budget deficit at $43,819 of what we have to find in money in order to meet the new Quabbin assessment and its impact on the overall budget, to include employee changes and anything else that wants to be considered.
So just to jump in again, so obviously there was a reduction in the assessment here. For us, it went down to 6.31%. We, as Ryan had said, at town meeting had approved 5%, and originally it was 8%. The reduction was not, and I'll just don't take me verbatim here, but it wasn't cuts per se from operations. It was more insurance that was sort of markedly less than was expected in a couple of different places. Two different places that reduced the amount that the schools were going to have to pay. So it wasn't necessarily cuts that they made, it was just a realization of some sort of late insurance realizations.
Those were actual bills that have come in after the budget was certified
Right.
and sent to the town. But the town also will see a savings on one of those, because you, I believe, get your health insurance through Quabbin, so you will also have a reduction in your health insurance line, correct?
We probably will. It's just it's a lot less because of the amount of staff that we have.
So we won't. We didn't budget. We budget on projection. So we projected on half this year being the same, which is the same numbers that everybody in this agreement got. So we knew that from July to January the numbers were going to be the same. Since there wasn't a lot of budget room, I didn't over project the last 6 months.
Yep.
So we do have some, I'd say, cushion in our health insurance like most people do, but it's not a. It's a very small cushion. We wouldn't be able to fill any of those gaps.
So did we already take that into consideration? Is that what you're saying?
So this number right here, this proposed, so if you look, I'm trying not to jump around too much because it's confusing, but the change in the if you just took the budget as it was passed at town meeting and then layered on the much reduced assessment from the schools, then the change between the budget that was approved and this new school budget is $58,000. So the schools would hit our budget by another $58,000 minus any other changes. So if you take the state aid number, which is now real, because they've gone through their process, even though we're only one of 2 states that hasn't finished the state budget yet, but we're pretty sure on this number. So that 4,000 comes right off the top, so you're at 54,000. The other changes are changes that we've realized in our actual bills, or that we've saved through combining Lori's job and doing some of those employee changes. So the deficit now, instead of being 58, is 43.8. So we've realized some of the real low-hanging fruit, the stuff that Debbie said has changed that we can do. The rest of it will be cuts.
Right. Okay.
Or revenue changes.
So the deficit is a product of not only the differentiation of the school budget, it's all town expenses combined, correct?
That 43,819 is all of the changes that we've discussed already, plus the schools, that's what's left, that's what we gotta deal with.
Right.
Okay, so I guess we're here to we're here to move forward, right? So to move forward, the next step is for us to sort of collectively discuss what we're going to do with this new assessment that's been given to us, right? So we've got a town meeting to schedule. We have to do what we did last time, which is make a decision. Finance committee makes their decision, we make our decision on what sort of number to support going to town meeting like we did last time. To remind you, last time 8% was given to us, we went to town meeting with 5%, which passed at town meeting, albeit some confusion, but did pass at town meeting. So I guess our discussion tonight is to talk about our first step on what we want to do this time. So
Can I ask a question? Where does that 8% number come from?
it came from the initial assessment from the schools to say, this is how much money our budget's gonna be, this is how much you owe, town of Hubbardston.
So at a 2.8% QRSD budget increase overall, the assessment increase based off of changes in our minimum local contribution and other formulas in the school budget was 8.82%.
We, luck of the draw, got screwed this year because of some assessment stuff, so that's just the way it happened. So the overall increase from the school budget doesn't seem like it's exorbitant, but it just so happens that it turns out to be exorbitant for us.
Brian, how does the number that QRSD came back with affect what the other two towns who rejected the initial budget? How close is it to what they had approved at their town meetings?
So I don't have that exact calculation yet. So I did reach out to Hardwick to see where their town administrator, to see where they were at.
I have it in my truck. Do either of you guys or any of you guys have the spreadsheet?
It's still under what they voted. It's still, what we assessed them is still over what they voted.
So I do need,
So it doesn't meet anyone.
New Braintree and Hardwick would have to increase in order to hit that number. Would have to increase at their town meetings.
Correct. So it wasn't, we were thinking that maybe, we're just sort of spitballing here, we were thinking that maybe they would, the school committee would pick the number of the least assessed to meet it, so that it would sort of guarantee the fact that that town would potentially vote for it, but it didn't quite work out that way. So they still have to vote a deficit, I guess is the best way to put it.
So my guess was that they would go to the second lowest town, which is Hardwick, at 5.81%, guaranteeing that Hardwick would vote for it, and leaving Hubbardston the fifth town out if they were to stay at 5%. But they came in about 0.5% high.
And honestly, we were sort of mentally preparing ourselves for that, and that wouldn't have been the end of the world. So that's unfortunate that it didn't come to that. So that we sort of have to figure out where to go from here. But so I don't know. I mean, I as far as leading discussion on what we want to do, Susan, as far as discussing what we want to do from here, as far as the 6.3%, I know you guys haven't formally met about this or any of that yet, and we're just sort of formally meeting about it all tonight. But I sort of said my piece when I was at the school committee meeting the other night about what it was going to do as far as to town operations that we currently have, some of our sort of the things that we had put in place for the future, from economic development and this and that, and different positions and adding hours and just sort of getting to a stable place is, we were, I was definitely not in favor of off the bat anyway, approving as far as recommending a 6.31% increase and sort of having the same stance we did last time. I don't know.
Could I ask a question to that point? What are we trying to do now? Is it basically simply saying, all right, the school committee's come back and it's now 6.3, we want to take it before the town, and either we say the finance committee recommends or doesn't recommend it, or are we talking that we might outright say no to the 6.3?
Oh.
Is that where we are in this meeting here?
We are. We could do it. I guess the options are this. We could do exactly what we did last time, which is bring the same 5% to the floor, to the townspeople, and say, look, we, as a select board, will talk about it. These guys will talk about it as well. This is what we think is most healthy for the town, is this is the amount of increase that we think we can afford. We present that to the town, and the town says yay or nay. If they say we agree, like they did last time, making sure everybody understands what that means, then our vote then goes back as a sort of a no to the school committee, and we wait to see the other four or however many special town meetings, probably two others, right? The other two towns that didn't vote yes. The other ones wouldn't necessarily have to do that, right? So it'd be two other towns. They won't.
That's right.
So the two other towns, and we'd have to see. So basically, one of those other two towns would have to say no as well. And if they did, then we would go through another round of this if there were time. And if not, then as I said before, it goes to the state, and we sort of see what we go from there. And just to restate it, I know I'm talking a little bit here, and we're a little bit all over, but if it goes to the state, we're at the state's mercy. So all sides are at the state's mercy. Basically,
Right.
the state can come in and say,
Yep.
you owe the 8%. And at that point, we're at, a troubling point. Just as if they said, no, we agree, you can't afford that, but it's not in our control anymore. So that's what we have to make sure we evaluate as we go through this, that we're sure about our minimums and maximums, because the decision really matters. Ed?
Well,
That happened once in the past, was that maybe about 5 years
Yep.
ago?
Mhm.
About 5-6 years ago.
5
it
or 6
happened.
years ago that happened?
Yeah,
I
the state
remember that.
went with the final school committee.
It did. The state went with the final school committee, sort of recommendation, for lack of a better
Yeah.
assessment, I guess is that what it would be, and that was made plenty clear to me the other night when I was at that meeting. So
Could I ask what the size of the excess and deficiency account is at this time?
Yeah, I don't have those figures with me.
And how much was used to reduce the budget?
I don't have that sheet with me. Why, what's the issue?
Well, that is a source of reducing the budget if it's advisable to do so. If the E&D account is a fairly sizable number, which is kept at a certain level because of emergency purposes, if there's an excess in that excess can be used by the school committee to reduce their overall budget, which would get us closer maybe to a mutual goal.
And I think the past several audits that we've had, independent audits, have said that our E and D is way too low for our district. So I mean.
We were on a warning for our laundry.
So I mean, E and D to use in excess, I mean, they may have used a little, but they didn't use it excessively, largely because, there have been audits, and they've said that we don't have enough in our E and D account.
And just to clarify, and I know you understand this, but the quadrant budget is basically 2% increase, which is not an astronomical budget. The problem that the towns are facing is the required local contribution. The district cannot control that. That's the town's problem to find a solution to that, with working with DOR.
How can it be question, how can it be a 2% basic, 2% total budget increase?
Before this
And,
budget.
and 3 or 4 of the other towns have 5 or 6% increases. Well, how's that?
Because of your required local contribution. There's a cycle with Department of Revenue that each town goes through. I don't know if it's 3 years or Ryan
It is.
probably knows this information. But your incomes are reassessed and your property values. And that's when DOR decides what Hubbardston can afford based on those numbers.
let me just add something real quick. And again, what we're going to do now? Not that this is bad in any ways, but let's just do Robert rule of order so that we don't sort of just keep jumping around. So we'll just go through me to do that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But just to add into this real quick, there's actually, I think one of the towns had a negative assessment. So what was it? Hardwick had a negative. So there.
Yeah, I was wondering how you. could
Yeah,
take
no,
a
it was all over the place,
2%
just based on the
increase and
assessment. So,
have
but that's kind of
3 towns,
that sort of
uh,
answers
be
some of it there.
over
It was
So
pretty
the long
wide.
was short, before we had any budget increase whatsoever, Hubbardston was looking at a 5% increase. That's how it got to be where it is, because of that cycle.
Right.
And we benefit from it other years, so I think what everybody would like to do is try to stabilize that, so you don't see those big jumps every 3 years or so.
And Ryan, have you already engaged some of the other towns in the discussion of, trying to align the assessments?
We have, so I know OCAM has invited, I was gonna report this later, but
Sorry.
OCAM is invited for the board to come, or a representative from the board to come and speak. And I know the town administrators, we have all met about this quite a bit, to talk to our boards and things like that, cause none of us wanna see town versus school. It does not help in
Right.
terms of budgeting and the other priorities, and most importantly is the kids, right, in this, so there has been a lot of discussion, it's just who's gonna drive it forward, and it's gotta go to the boards each way. So the long way would be if the boards went around and did it to each other, or it's centralized through the school committee, or in some way, there has to be some agreement, because it has to be unanimous. And I know in Josh's presentation, there's some incentive for some towns to not wanna change this formula, because they don't get hit with roller coaster assessments like we do, they're kinda stable, so.
Right, okay. Okay, well, I don't know, the finance committee, you guys wanna, chime in?
Can I just, I'm sorry to just jump in,
Yeah.
so, they did use quite a bit of E&D to answer your question. According to this, I have 417,000
Left.
to offset assessments, which is a lot of their E&D. I don't know how much is left, but that's how much they put into the operating budget in order to offset some assessment costs.
How much free cash did we use to do the same?
We're at 100, so,
It's a lot higher percentage of our budget than it is of their budget. Anyway,
Well, all of this has come about, fairly recently. The finance committee has not met to discuss any of this. The purpose of our joining tonight is to hear what everyone has to say.
okay,
I would note that, in one of our prior meetings, when we recommended the 5%, we had indicated, my memory serves me right, and the minutes will correct me if I'm wrong, that, at that time, it was the sense of the committee that, a 6% increase would not be advisable.
Not be what?
advisable.
Advisable.
Okay. Mhm.
But we did not vote on that because it wasn't before us.
Yep. Okay. And now we're looking at 6.3,
Right.
okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, there was a document given out, I think it, maybe the finance committee meeting, that basically, showed how the district calculates the operating capital assessments. You may, you may have it. That was the, shooting shotgun into the air that, somebody referred to the committee at the.
Oh, the deer in the headlights?
No, I think it was the shooting shotgun into the air. And, fairly comprehensive document that was given at the first finance committee meeting.
Okay.
And what's the point of that?
I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that
Oh, we are.
it wasn't a shotgun.
No, no, we are aware.
Okay. Go ahead, Ed.
And this is, I hadn't been involved with the finance committee for a number of years, but, from my history of the finance committee, we always take a look at students and the decline in students, from, what is the school hold, 2,400, something like that? And it was full at one time, and now we've lost, in 10 years, I think we've lost 1,000 kids. And over the next 3 years, we may lose another 300. So the numbers come down, and I fully understand that, it means lower class sizes, it doesn't definitely mean less teachers or that. But one thing that always used to increase and never gets reduced in the school budget is administration. And I don't know whether, do we still have 2 superintendents, or do we just have one?
No,
now?
we do not.
We have one
Just one.
superintendent.
And do we still have, how many principals?
We've cut the number of principals we have.
We have one principal doing 2 schools.
But you're hiring.
Our high school principal is now middle school, high school, and he has an assistant principal, so there's 2 for middle high school now. And there's 2 at Ruggles Lane, one of which is, doubles as a special ed person as well. The vice principal is also
Yeah.
special ed team chair, and then each of the elementary schools has one.
That's great to hear
And
because,
actually,
because as we have.
Oakham and New Braintree share.
Oakham and
So-
New Braintree share.
Yeah, that's great to hear because as we diminish the, you know, the number of students, obviously, you know, you still have a great deal of paperwork,
You're
but if
exactly
we're
right.
consolidating and trying to combine schools, certainly, administration is one place that never seems to ever
It
go
has.
down.
It has gone down.
So I thought they were trying to hire. I knew it was temporary. Mr. Musnicki was moving over, but I thought it was temporary that he was going to be both high school and middle school, and they were actually trying to hire for the middle school as well. Did I misunderstand that?
They had said that they were going to.
Okay, so this is just
consider-
temporary as far as at the
But,
high school and middle school.
but just, I mean, obviously, you know, in the last, first of all, I think the number of teachers has gone down significantly, but the number of staff hasn't. And largely that's due to the fact that schools are no longer schools. Schools are like, you need social workers, you need counselors, they're being utilized. There's a number of unfunded mandates that come from the state, parents, quite honestly, I put a little bit of the blame on, we really need to, focus on, students and not, having, on our students that are in our home rather than having the school, like, taking care of their, social interaction problems, which is a serious issue. And if any of you have been in a school lately, Quabbin runs a pretty tight ship, and that's largely because they tried to keep up with the staffing and the age to actually deal with that.
Understood. Okay, well, to sort, and yeah, go ahead, Deb.
The number of teachers does eventually decline, that because with the, and I have that information, I took some stuff, I didn't know what to bring for tonight, but, historically, you do see, I have a chart that shows the number of teachers and positions we have, but when you lose 100 students
Yeah.
over all the schools, you're not gonna be able to cut, teachers
understand.
immediately, but
Yeah.
over time, the number of teachers has significantly decreased as well.
Right,
Deb.
but teachers aren't admin.
No, but we have decreased both staff.
Deb, that spreadsheet of the teachers and administration would be good to add, that the finance committee had a presentation and it had the student enrollment population, percent of enrollment from each town, but it would also be nice to have administration and, numbers and, a history of it.
One of many presentations we've had, just a slide in one of those.
Is that
so
like
I
a
can
cost
find
per pupil? You could do the budget and do a cost per pupil for.
I wouldn't feel comfortable doing any of that information, that would have to come from Cheryl, and it's too bad that they're not invited to these meetings, because we could get that information.
That may have been
immediately.
public hearing.
Yeah.
That may have been at the public hearing
That's
where
right,
they showed
it's
that.
always a slide,
Last
so
10
I'll be
years
happy
would
to
be
look
fine.
through.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, one of the difficulties in reducing administrators is there's more responsibility on them now to do more reviews. The state has increased the number of times they have to evaluate teachers, so they're worn a little thin, like they spend time bouncing from classroom to classroom, so it's really hard to reduce them any more than they are.
Okay. All right, so, and I think this is a discussion we can have, we should have all year long, is about this sort of thing and making sure that we understand the school and you guys understand us and all that, but we've got some numbers to deal with now. And there are, those discussions we've had, plus what the formula is, plus the, rural factor that we've talked about this year that didn't happen, all these other things that we want to happen that haven't. And we're in a year that we have to deal with the current situation we've got, which is a new assessment, has come from the school district formally to us, and now we have to sort of decide, what to do as far as acting on it. And not to jumping ahead to the next one there, but open special town meeting warrant, when we open that, all we're doing is opening it, right? We have how long till we have to actually decide what's gonna be on it and to close it?
So, the budget doesn't have to be finalized before you close the warrant.
Yep.
You don't need to include budget information until the day of town meeting. You can hand it out, because the motion's what matters at town meeting, not the printed warrant. I would obviously strongly advise that the more information that gets to the public, the better the
Yeah, agreed.
decision
Yeah.
can be made. You can open and close the warrant tonight with the items that we have, but I sent correspondence to you that maybe we should keep it open for a week in case there's anything lingering
No,
out
I
there
agree.
or two.
Yep.
And I have the 3 items that we have right now for the special town meeting. And one of them, it's good the school committee's here in case you have any questions on that, is we were accepted into the MSBA program for the
Yep.
school roof. For residents who don't know what that is, we get a tremendous amount, almost 60% reimbursement from the state if we follow the MSBA program for what is expected to be over $1 million project.
And that's the
replacement.
Massachusetts School Building Authority.
So, we agreed at a previous selectmen's meeting to fund the feasibility study, or at least put it in front of town meeting for a vote, so that is a warrant article, asking for $40,000 to fund a feasibility. We think it'll be less than that, but $40,000 to cover a feasibility study for the center school roof to get into that MSBA program now that they've invited us. The other item being the budget, and, if we can, some cleanup articles, and 1 capital request so far.
Okay. Susan?
I have a question. We now have the new certified assessment.
Mm.
But I believe that the only Quabbin school budget document that I have, or that I've seen, was the one approved in the March public hearing. Is there a new budget with line items in it that is available for us to look at?
I think Cheryl put it on the website.
Is it
but
on
I
the website
haven't
if I look?
I haven't looked.
I think June might be on the website, I'm not so sure the most recent one's on the website.
Cause that's, okay, who would I
If
speak to?
I could have my paperback that I was letting you look at, and do you have, I could maybe tell you.
It's got all sorts of doodles on it now too, it's a mess.
We were passing notes.
Everything's taken.
Well, he used to have the copier next to him, he thought he was gonna be able to make a quick one, but it's
We
over there now.
only- We only made 2 reductions.
Right.
Workers' compensation account was reduced by 26,155, and the health insurance account was reduced by 89,700.
And if I can just add to
So if
that,
I look at the March budget and make those 2 changes, everything else is the same.
If you wanna copy this page, it doesn't have, it pretty much has, it's very small,
No,
but I
but we
think
made some
that's-
reductions, we also
Well-
made some reductions in June, though, too.
Okay.
These are the most
I
recent.
would
This
like,
is the
I would
most
like,
recent.
what I would like to what I would like to see is something produced by the, I guess, the school committee or admin, that is the final budget, line item budget, that brings us to our assessment.
sure,
I
sure,
wanna know if that's available and if we can all get it.
Cheryl will have that.
That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cheryl will have that?
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
great, thank you.
So let me just comment one other thing, is that, and I wish I brought it, it's in my truck here, and you guys do have it there, but the reductions that were realized in this, most recent, assessment that was, or that turned into whatever the most recent assessment, were not the most aggressive, right? I mean, Cheryl, basically on her recommendation by the agent, was gonna wait another month or something to see if that first reduction,
Cheryl is waiting.
she's waiting.
24th?
But she only took 5, remember, there was like a 5 or 10%, so it could go down a bunch more still.
Yeah.
Not that it's necessarily going to, but it was not the, like, let's give it, you know, the which I don't think is a responsible thing to do anyway, but still, it looked as though there was the possibility of further reduction based on how the next few months go.
Potentially, yes.
Right, I don't know how that helps us, but it still could be some more.
Historically, we got hit one year with a 13% increase.
Exactly, so that's why gun shy, I
she-
understood.
It was typically around an 8%, I
Yep.
believe. Yeah, I can tell you, 2015 was 13%, 16 was 8.8, 17 was 8.4, 18 was 3.5, and 19 was 0.
And so the assessment the original recommendation, if I recall correctly, based on the original budget was 10%.
She budgeted a 10%.
And this reduction brought it down to 5%, but there's a chance it's actually 0% like last year, which would even bring it down more. But they, based on their advisor's recommendation, didn't go from 10 to 0, they went from 10 to 5 from a responsibility standpoint. So
Well,
they're,
that's fine,
Yeah.
what I wanna do, in anticipation of our meeting is to see exactly what it is
Sure.
we're talking about here.
all right, it's easy, right,
That's
Cheryl?
That
Okay.
13%, wasn't that the year that they got that one-time hit for special ed? Because I'm,
No,
This
this
is-
is the
this is-
health
this is insurance.
insurance.
oh, it was the health insurance, because it was a
Yes,
year
and
that it
it's
really
based-
spiked up.
It's
And
based on
Maureen
the
came in front of us and said it was because of this one-time thing from the state, which they had no control over.
No,
And
we
we just
do
had to
not
absorb
have
it.
any
Right.
control over special ed. If
Yeah.
a special ed student moves into the district and has a very expensive placement, then that's our responsibility. No, this is the health insurance, and
Okay.
it's based on the member usage. is how our premiums are
Okay.
assessed.
Ed?
Is it possible for the school committee to get a number from what would be the number from E&D? It would take to make all of the budgets work for all of the towns that they could give the finance committee?
It's on that
I can
sheet.
do that.
We can do that, yes, that's easy. I think it's actually on that presentation, I think it said what you'd have to reduce to get down, to Hubbardston down to 0.
So
It
we're
was-
about 30%.
It was a couple $100,000.
It was
if I recall
couple
correctly.
$100,000, I agree.
Yeah.
We're a little under a third, a little over a quarter, a little under a third of the whole budget, so multiply our number by
Yeah.
4.
Right, it was like 220,000.
Yeah,
It's a
it
lot.
was, it was.
Thank you.
And what,
I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't add that.
sure,
I've added this before. You know, we have 4 school committee members, and,
That's what they're.
somebody thought there were 3. There's, David Correa is also a school committee member.
yep,
And whether we think that we can reduce the budget more or target certain categories, I'm sure there are some members of the school committee that think we're already really cutting the budget, or our increase in the budget is below where it should be to do justice to our students, okay? I'm just telling you that, okay?
Oh, they told me that.
I'm sure there are some. And it's just a matter of, I don't see a lot of fat in the budget to reduce further. I mean, that's just.
yeah, no, hey, we wanna hear your
Just like
opinion.
everybody here may have a different opinion as to
Yeah.
what your budget should be.
Sure,
You know, it's the same. I mean, do we?
No, I agree with that, and, you know, I gotta be honest. I almost feel like we should give that QEMP award back. This has not been a collaboration. The public is now against us. I was very uncomfortable sitting at that town meeting. And whether you think it or not, according to Mass General Law and, you know, the education laws and regulations, you were supposed to put our assessment before the voters and let them vote. The voters were extremely confused and you did not put our assessment number forward.
Deb, and I think I said,
I'll leave it at that.
all right,
But
but
anyway,
I can't, so, I.
that's your prerogative.
But I need to answer it. I mean, I understand what you're saying there, but we can't just, knowing the numbers and knowing what it would do, we can't just willfully know that if somebody votes yes on what's there, it's just literally gonna nuke the town. These guys go away, stuff goes away, police go away. We just can't do that. So we have to, whether,
completely understand.
so that's why.
I'm just telling you what the process is, whatever the reason.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
in
go ahead.
4 years, we've tried to work to close schools, to consolidate. No, not one town, Hubbardston included, has wanted to change anything.
Well-
What they've asked us for is more. We are not we don't have enough in our budget to provide our students what we should. And we really take a very hard look and really try to get this budget down to as minimal as we can. And we're still out getting grants and still adding services and vocational needs and different things to these students.
I guess I would say is the one comment, and I agree with you, and I've been to enough of meetings between both parties that I understand it all. But I guess I would have to say, to counter to that a little bit, was that I've never really seen the school committee, and this is not an accusation, but I'm just, my observation, I've never really seen the school committee discuss whether or not something was good for the towns or not. And I
That's
know your
discussed in
role,
every meeting.
but I know your role is for the kids, so that's the point. But overall, and this was part of a little bit of a larger discussion recently we had, whether or not we should have earlier collaboration about, hey, this is where we're at, this is what we're trying to plan for the future, that sort of stuff.
Well, quite
That-
honestly, you're putting us on the hot seat for our budget that barely meets the students' needs and is a very reasonable 1.9% increase, when the problem is your local contribution. It's, you're making the town's revenue problem from Department of Revenue with your reassessment and revaluation. You've pitted the public against the school budget now because of that.
Yeah, see, I mean, you
And
see it that
you know
way,
what?
but,
Well, how else would I
because
see it?
when a line item is 60% of your annual budget,
But it never used to be, and that's the state problem.
that's a
So you're
statewide
coming
issue.
after
Oh, I know.
us instead of the state.
oh, I know, I'm just
is
saying,
what
it
I'm
needs that,
trying to say.
I'm just saying it needs that level of
You're
of.
going after the wrong people.
Well, we're not going after anybody. We're just trying to, make things work. That's all we're trying to do. I mean, we could say yes to everything and not have operations go on. That's not what we want. So that's why we're all here tonight discussing. There was a hand before you, Ed.
So, if I could speak on a couple things. One, I'm not interested in gutting the QRSD budget. What I think it's conflating two issues. One is what our assessment is, and one is these wild fluctuations of our assessment. And so I agree with you that 2.8% or 1.9% overall budget increase is
Responsible.
Very reasonable. It's very reasonable. What I think the perspective that at least I'm coming from is, but we started with an 8.8% increase, and yes, this is based on the statutory method of allocating allocating assessments, and I think my personal goal then is to readdress that, to come up with a regional district method, which my understanding is the 5 towns would have to all agree to, as a way of trying to stabilize the increases so that if the overall budget increases 1.9%, each town sort of absorbs a much less fluctuating sort of change.
Yep.
You have
I
to
am-
also
I'm-
understand that needs to be voted annually by each town.
So I
before the-
I do understand. I completely understand.
Good.
I will apologize to the school committee if I misspoke at our last meeting when I thought there were 3 members of the school committee as opposed to 4. And you've made it a point to correct a number or to point out a number of things that the finance committee has said. I am not trying to antagonize the school committee in any way. I am trying to help both the school committee and our town in terms of getting our budget stabilized so that every year we're not looking at cutting $40,000 from the DPW or $40,000 from fire and safety, because that's what we're left with this current budget, where we still have $43,000 to cut from what is already bare bones services. So, again, I'm not trying to jump on anybody, and I'm not trying to conflate the issue of admin cuts or school closures or anything like that. I am here to try and stabilize the increases year over year in our budget that is our assessment.
Bill.
I mean, we would need to go through the process of reevaluating the agreement, which we did in anticipation of all of this that's happening. We did that like 6 years ago. And we put, because it was a little fuzzy about closing schools, we put in a specific process, went to each town, had discussions, had lots of meetings. There was another committee like when it was right before then where everyone got together and discussed it. And ultimately now we have that mechanism to close a town, but it's not gonna work. It's not gonna, New Braintree, we've sort of had discussions with New Braintree and they're not open to that idea. That's really one way
Sorry,
that
they're not
you
open
can
to the idea of
closing
changing.
their school.
Oh, I'm not talking.
They
I'm talking
agreed to
about
that.
the
No, I
way
think
of
people
divvying
would
up assessments.
be open to it, but it would be a long process where we'd have to open up the agreement, have discussions. We had committees from each town were part of that process, and we redid.
We could
the
change
budget.
it.
Oh, hold on. Wait. So we have a couple people who had their hands up throughout this process. So Ed, I don't know if you still want to add in, and then Mark, if you want to go after that.
Yeah, I was going back to where we started way back when Prop 2.5 was voted, and I don't know, maybe that's 20 years now, something like that.
Oh, more than that.
Maybe more than that. And Hubbardston had a very low base at the time Prop 2.5 went through. So Prop 2.5 really ties our hands in so many ways, because that's the only amount we can put onto our budget annually, unless there's going to be an override, which we don't have a great history on that. And so every year, it comes up to the same thing. Well, if we go up more than 2.5% in one area, then some other area is going to be less than 2, unless we have new growth and things like that change the formula. I wanted to ask whether, I know a while back we had asked the school if they would consider doing a zero-based budget, where they basically just start and go through every number, every department, and build their budget, starting with a zero base, and then build their budget up to to what that number is. Cause a lot of times budgets just, you know, well, we had so much last year, so we'll put that in this year and we'll add on. But, a good way, a business way, a corporation would say, all right, this year we're gonna start with a zero-based budget, and we're gonna go and we're gonna build our budget, so how many employees do you have, fringe benefits costs, supplies, but they build it from zero all the way up, and then they can justify the particular budget number that they have. Has the school have a?
I don't think it would
Consider
meet your strict definition of a zero-based budget, but each department head or cost center manager, also a principal, takes a look at each need and builds their budget up from there. I don't think it would meet the pure definition of a zero-based budget.
Yeah.
I mean, there are multi-year union agreements with the teachers' unions that stipulate.
Yeah, that's a
certain
fixed-
rate.
Well, that
that's
would
a-
be the same for
An increasing
most
fixed
business.
cost.
Yeah,
But I think, I
One
don't
sec.
think any
Deb-
of us,
Deb then.
I don't think any of us would object.
No, I just wanted to say, you know, I mean, the state used to pay 45, the town used to have 45% of the budget, of the school budget, now you're paying over 62%. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the state level, you know, we have to continue to work towards these state problems.
We do.
Not that it's gonna solve it today, but.
Ryan?
Just, there's a structural, I'm an outsider, so I can give some perspective, but there's a structural deficit in the budget. So even at a very reasonable 1.9%, and I think the school committee does a good job crafting their budget, and 1.9% is 100% reasonable. It's $280,000 increase, or 3%. So with Prop 2.5% is what we can go up, even though our revenues went up this year, our entire revenue base was 3% of an increase. So right off the bat, you're at zero for the town side, which is fine, and we keep getting efficiencies and we'll keep doing our job, but at some point, the cut's too deep. And the way Prop 2.5 was designed is towns need to assess themselves what level of service they want and decide whether or not they're going to increase to the level they want.
Yep.
It doesn't seem to me that the residents are supporting a revenue increase, which is causing the pitting of town versus school. I don't think it's personal. In communication, so I've been to the schools half a dozen times and been to the school committee twice to try and open up communications, and to have the administration say they're not invited here, I think that's not true. I've tried to communicate as much as possible, and the school committee should know that, because if you're hearing differently, then I'd at least like to give my side of it, which I've tried and made it a goal since August to meet and meet and
Were
meet.
they invited tonight?
Well, we wanted to have a conversation with you. The reps, the Hubbards, because every time I meet with them, they want to talk about the state, and I'm like, I want to talk about Hubbardston, because we need to fix the problem in Hubbardston. So I was hoping that the school committee would want to talk about Hubbardston, which we are. And then in terms of and I'm sorry to monopolize, but in terms of but legally, and I got what you said legally, so we talked to council about what needs to go in front of the town, and if you put a department request in front of the town, that satisfies a legal requirement. However, I'm hearing loud and clear from you that you don't believe that the townsfolk's got the right information. So what would that look like to you? In terms of what they get for budget information, so that we can properly represent both budgets and then have the town actually decide? Cause I was expecting the superintendent to have a presentation about.
I had many people say to me, I thought I voted for the school budget. It was so convoluted between what was the real number, what was presented, and the conversation that went on after. And I respect the finance committee very much. I worked for the town for 11 years. I know, you know, what's involved in this. But I don't feel that it was appropriate for the finance committee to have their perspective. I believe it should have been the facts. And, you know, I felt very uncomfortable when called out at that meeting, and I serve as an elected official myself, and we can agree to disagree, that's perfectly fine. But I volunteer my time just as much as all of you do as well, and we try to make the best decisions we can. And to call out our stipends, like we're getting a big fat paycheck, we get $500, there's 14 members, the chair gets $600, and then Jess Bennett, the executive secretary, gets $125 per meeting. I believe there's approximately 32 meetings.
Was I incorrect in the amount of the stipends?
No,
Was
but
I
it was
incorrect?
misleading. I believe it was misleading, that it made it seem that the stipend line paid to the school committee members was $11,000.
It was. I just asked you if the total
It
was wrong.
also included the executive secretaries.
Oh, okay, I see.
We
Perhaps
do
then
not
the-
receive all that.
Okay,
So-
Mark?
Well, the budget.
Alright, guys,
Anyway,
Mark?
I don't wanna get into.
Deb,
Well,
Deb.
but I do get to respond
Okay,
to this.
you do. Just let's get Mark.
Mark, I do get to respond. The numbers that I gave at town meeting were totals off of the budget information that you provided at the public hearing. That's all I had, it's only math. If my addition was incorrect, I will be happy to
I think it was
redo
your
the
personal
numbers.
opinion
It
that
was, those
bothered
were
me.
not my personal opinions,
That's
those
how
were
you
the
started
numbers.
it. I said,
Well.
this is my perspective.
All right, hey guys, hold up for 1 second.
So-
Okay.
Well,
Oh.
we're not gonna go through
Anyway.
the text.
Hey guys,
that
hey
you
guys.
said, and
Hold on.
I'm-
No, no, no,
I'm
hey.
done.
Okay.
The
And I'm
public that
done.
has
Hey,
come
guys.
to me thought it was,
Deb, Deb,
they were confused.
for a moment, okay?
They did not know what they voted.
Deb, please. Mark.
Okay, you know, I don't think any of us would agree, and most school committee members wouldn't disagree if you guys decided to go out, get together among the towns and decide a different way to do the assessments. I don't think, you know, personally,
Will
you
we
know,
have your support or your help with that?
you'll have my, if you wanna do it, I don't have a problem with it. I
No, but I
personally
Okay, hey
don't
Josh, hey
support-
Josh, hey
I
Josh.
can't say you can have the whole
It's different.
school committee
Okay,
support,
but
but,
okay.
but I think it's a good idea. It could level things out. If you wanna go to the Department of Revenue and try, and I've been told that this is like, you know, an act of God, to line up the assessments for every town in the same year, every 3 years, I don't have a problem with that. I know one of Ryan's big concerns is having a school budget going forward 3 to 5 years. Now, if you had this number right here, 34,823,261, which is the current number, in January, what would you have done differently?
Which number?
What would, the most recent number that we voted, what would you have done differently if you had that 34 million number?
What would, you asked my personal?
No, just what would you guys have done differently? The issue isn't really the school budget. The issue is how the assessments are calculated.
So, I mean, we've had this conversation before, if my position wasn't able to project forward and offer recommendations to the town, you shouldn't have it.
And you heard me the other night, I requested.
You advocated big time.
I advocated for them to take a look at the number. They can figure out if it's 2% going forward, or the average of, you could take a 5-year moving average per se, and come up with some numbers that would probably get to where you want it to be, as long as he promised that you'd never hold us right to
I did.
where
I
you
said I
think
pinky
it-
swear. I pinky swore right at the meeting. Yeah.
But I mean,
That's how Deb reacted then too.
you know, I can see the need for some numbers, but if you took a look at the 2% and moved it out forward, you could probably come up with a projection. Anybody in this room could probably come up with a projection that might be fairly close, unless the state decided to give us a whole lot more money, which I don't see.
Which is a good step. I think that's a good
But
step.
the problem is the local contribution,
We know.
that's what we can't predict, I mean, still, they posted on Department of Ed website, it was posted in January and it never changed. So that's the number the school committee cannot predict for you, that helps you, and that's what drives your assessments.
I know this always feels very personal, but it's not my desire, I'm not a pro-school guy, is to find a number that the town will support, because the residents decide the level of service they want. So, if you have some forward-leaning projections, and you can go to the town and say, we know it's gonna be more money and we have to increase the revenues, but here's how much it will increase, and you can stick to it, then that builds the type of trust that allows for an override. Cause the predominant thing I hear is, I would support an override, but I don't know what next year is gonna look like. And that's scary, because if you increase everyone's taxes and then you have to do it again, it's not
And
gonna happen.
that's
Bill?
true, yeah.
The problem is that we don't know what the state is going to give. The state has slowly but surely cut back, and that's why we can't even begin to see until March and April. So an early budget in January is a little fictitious when the legislature and the Senate, they haven't even put in their numbers yet.
So to characterize my opinion on that is, I think you have to try. In most towns, best practice from Department of Revenue, best practice in every sense says if you're not forecasting, then you're not trying.
What percentage of your budget is contribution from the state that would vary each year?
This year, 627,000.
Which is like what percent? Cause ours,
6%.
okay, so.
Well, outside the schools, what
But-
is it?
So that Cheryl said that exact sentence to me, so the counter to that is 60% of my expenses, our expenses, Hubbardston expenses, come from the schools. So I have to forecast something that, if it goes up 1% is $50,000. If it goes down it's $50,000. I still have to forecast that. So I do a 10-year look back and I say, the school budget has performed this way over X, that gives percentage Y. I think they'll come in about 5%. And so we plan the entire budget around 5%, it comes in at 8, 9, now you're laying everybody off.
But that's because of another variable which has to do with the assessments. So that's another thing that has to get fixed. So they're just layered. You know, it's sort of layered problems. But Ed?
I've seen in the Westminster Ashburnham district, Oakmont, where they've actually put forth an override for just the school budget. So I don't know whether we have a different way, or if we have different opportunities to offer this to the town when we do the special town meeting. But one way, I've seen it done in other communities, I don't know whether we could do it here, where it could be funded either by an override or just then they have to decide whether they wanna do the override or where the cuts will come from, whether they're municipal or educational. And I think I just have to say this, when you said, you think the town's against the school committee, I think the town is very proud of their high school and their school system, so.
Oh, I'm glad to
I
hear
don't,
that.
I don't think, in any way, the product that comes out of our school systems is still great, so. I don't think the town people.
I think we have a great school
I don't think the
system, I really do.
townspeople feel that way at all. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. All right, so we gotta move forward here in some way, shape, or form. So I think we've, I'm not stopping the discussion here, but I think we've brought up all the things applicable to, I guess, us having further discussion on what we have now as far as a new assessment, right? Is there anything else that you think we haven't talked about that applies to this new assessment, or do we have all the information in front of us?
Just that there's unsettled parameters to the FY20 budget. So we're operating right now, but it's not just 1/12 the school budget. We have to do the same on the town side.
Yep.
So a lot of people's jobs, their hours and different things are on hold right now as we decide what it looks like right now, August 26th, what we can do.
Okay.
So it's a big decision, it's a lot of money, but it's gonna impact, and then they're gonna have to pay back to July 1, so there's a lot of variables to be considered.
All right, so recommended next step then, is to open the warrant?
So the MSBA gives 60 days from June 26th, so we have to have a special town meeting by August 26th, we promised that to the MSBA.
And we have to have it based on the new assessment as well. I think it's, that almost aligns to the day.
So we lucked out at all times correctly.
Okay.
It can be any time in August. I'm gone from August 1st, August 17th, so there was some thought that maybe it would be when I got back,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
before the 26th. So the 22nd seems to be enough time
To get the,
for me to help you guys.
yeah, right, and to get all the notifications out and all that sort of stuff too, because
Right.
that's all gonna happen.
So if that's the date, and we've set it as a maybe, if the board commits to that date and opens the warrant today with the closing date and looks at the original warrant, we can hit that time frame. It's in
How's
the
that sound to you guys? Yeah? Yeah?
I'd like
Okay.
to ask one thing though, in terms of what is gonna be presented to the town at this meeting. Is it the 6.31
We don't know yet.
We don't know.
increase? Well, because I think another thing that we should try to prepare, because I think a normal question that would come up from anybody, if we're asking them to accept this increase, they're gonna ask, where are the cuts? Where's that $40,000+ coming from if we do accept the 6.3 as opposed to what we ourselves here want on the 5 one. I think the town needs to be able to have some information on that to decide whether or not they're gonna vote yea or nay, if that's what's presented to them. Where are they gonna be cut? With the specific, is it the police, is it this, is it who's gonna lose a job, and so forth. Giving all that before you ask them to vote yea or nay. And I'd like to see that that's something that we can be present to them, if nothing else, but at that town meeting at that time.
Okay, and just because it needs to be said again, we can sort of vote whatever we want, but if the other towns all vote to accept the most recent assessment, it you know, they'll have 4 out of 5, and you know, so be it. So
it's a moot point.
but
right?
no,
Yeah.
but still, we
No.
just gotta do our side as if we're living in a vacuum to an extent. So okay, so do we want to I guess entertain a motion to open the town warrant? That'd be the next step here, Ryan?
Yes. I'll make a motion to open a special town warrant.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So the warrant is open. Can we review, I know we've already talked about it a little bit, but now in order, can we sort of review where we're at with that?
Just throwing it up on the screen for everyone, excuse me.
Yep.
So, Article 1, these are recommended to you. Obviously, the board has the power to take on, add on, and then recommend not, and then we need a closing date as well. So Article 1 is simply the budget again. So it'll be presented with line items, and would love input from the school committee, finance committee, and the board of selectmen as what information you'd like to go to the voters so that they can decide on all sides of the issue. Article 2.
Wait, can I go back to that for a second? So, Article 1 there is obviously, that could say exactly what it said at annual town meeting or anything else, right? So, as far as meetings to discuss this, the finance committee will have another meeting, soon, right? You guys have a meeting sometime soon?
Yes, we will.
So you guys have a meeting soon, and do we have another meeting while you're gone?
So tentatively, we schedule one for next week if we can get a quorum.
Next Monday.
Right.
Then I'm gone until the Monday before.
Okay,
town.
so that was the 29th, right? That's the one we talked about. Okay, so, all right, so that would be our time to discuss, and you,
You don't need me there, obviously, to meet. So.
understood, but no, still, we like you having around. So you guys meeting next week, are you, Susan, do you know?
We'll decide that tonight.
You said, okay, sounds good. So our next meeting's gonna be next Monday, and our goal will be to have our recommendations on Article 1 and, you know, what effects, if any, the new assessment has from the Board of Selectmen standpoint, so just so you know.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks.
Article 2 is the foreshadowed article regarding the schematic design and study of the Hubbardston Center School roof. So this article has been sent to the MSBA, and we'll get their blessing, sent to council, they'll adjust it back to the MSBA to make sure that we meet the requirements. I will be recommending to you that this 40,000 come from capital stabilization, just for ease of accounting, and that we put that money back with monies realized from capital projects at next year's annual town meeting.
And just 'cause we're talking about it, wanna scale it for us all again, how much the roof's gonna cost?
It's a total guess, 1 to $2 million.
Okay. And 60% of that would potentially come,
Which is a huge reimbursement number. So
Right.
the town would be responsible for 40%. So simple math of $1 million, the state would pick up 600,000 if we go into this program, and we'd be responsible for 400.
over some time period.
Probably looking for the town to support either borrowing for that type of number, debt exclusion, tons of options to cover the roof. It does. I was up there with the MSBA. It's leaking in several spots. It needs to be fixed. In the next, we thought it was going to be 2-3 years, but we got invited to this program. If we don't take advantage of it, who knows if we get back into the program, and then we're going to be responsible for the whole roof. So, kind of under the gun with it, but it needs to be done.
26 years old, I think, right? 1993, something like that. 27 and a half years old, okay. So, okay, well, anyway, thanks for pursuing that, and it sounds like that's, as long as we can present it correctly, hopefully we can, move forward with that. Okay,
Article 3 is, we'll be looking for, we're putting some storage containers down at the DPW. We wanna get out of the old fire department with our town records and get some stuff out of here so we can continue to work on our workspace. So we'd be looking for a little bit of free cash money to fund an industrial storage container, subject to the board's thoughts on that. And Article 4, found out today that will not be on there. So just those 3 articles.
so industrial storage container, we're talking about a big steel box outside?
Connex.
Connex box, right.
When I say Connex, people say, what's a Connex? So I said industrial storage container.
Sounds good, no, it was fancy, that was
What's
fancy.
gonna
name.
store in there, right? Just records?
So we would have rows of,
File cabinets.
I can't think of the
File-
shelves.
oh,
And we
shelves.
would put all of the files that are currently above the,
In the fire station upstairs.
so a little bit better climate control.
The only, I have a bunch of those and they do sweat
I know.
everything in the winter. That's gonna be a huge problem.
We have them too.
You've got snow on them, on a warm day, they're gonna sweat.
We have an insulated one, you have any insulated ones?
You
It's
put a
not-
roof on it.
Well, it still will sweat from the cold air inside.
Yeah,
If
you'd have
you
to
get
heat
a
it
warm
maybe.
day, there's condensation.
That's what I mean, we have an insulated one, which is, got some,
Probably helps a little bit.
it does, but it does have some swell issues inside as well,
Mhm.
depending,
Just keep
especially in the
that in mind.
summertime.
For sure.
Yeah,
Just trying to find ways to fit everybody in our space.
okay, so Article 4,
That's gonna be, that's no
It's
longer
not gonna be
in
on there.
play.
do we anticipate, have we heard any rumblings or anything like that about any, citizens articles or anything like that coming around?
If not, we will, depending on when this closes, pump this information out tomorrow to the public. It'll be a short hitter, but most special town meetings are.
Okay,
We'll send it to all boards and staffs. Haven't heard anybody ask for anything. And only certain things can be done at special town meetings. We can't do a lot of financial stuff. That's annual town meeting stuff. So there's only so much that can happen.
okay,
It doesn't preclude us from having another one. And since the comment was made, if there is any override in this, we have to consider the election that is involved in an override.
Sure.
It have to be done before, after, or at some point to make that valid.
okay. Okay, well, any other, I guess warrant discussion, anybody have anything else they wanna add here? Right now, we have an open warrant, with not a specific intention on when specifically to close it, besides the fact that during our next meeting, we will talk about, you know, what our recommendations are for the budget moving forward. Anything else?
It does need to be closed by, say, the end of the first week in August, by August 10th,
Okay,
in order to get it out to the printer and mailed.
sounds good. Okay. So, I guess, D, you have fiscal year 20 budget discussion,
That was.
kinda what we did there, right? And then we have the assessing assistant. Do you wanna talk about that?
Yes, so. I don't think there's anything left for everyone else.
I was about to say that, whether or not,
So I can talk while I do this. So we have been discussing with the town of Rutland, I mentioned this to the board previously, and also the Board of Assessors sharing a position in terms of filling our assistant assessor. So we've had a merry-go-round of employees, good employees, but constantly moving on at the assessing position, currently unfilled. Bobby was there for a while just as a stopgap, but that can't be a permanent solution, so she's done everything for the town now, so quickly at my job. We think the best solution would be a 30-hour position, where Rutland takes 2/3 of that. So we would have 10 hours here, 20 hours in Rutland. We're moving the assessors over here, and the plan would be this door is always open. They can call Rutland and we can assist with basic things, and then the administrator would be here and the assessors would still be here by the RRG contract. So it would feel more open, you wouldn't go to a closed door, even though we'd realize some savings in the hours. There's also been some discussion, RRG has a virtual platform that takes the place of an assistant, with assistantship happening in their Leominster office. So you push a button, picture FaceTime comes up, that person can bring up maps and others and help you. That would allow us to be open for every hour the town hall is gonna be open. It's sort of the way things are going, but the Board of Assessors, wants to see if we can hire a human first. So we are interviewing for this position tomorrow. So this IMA in front of you and in your packets over the weekend is allowing us to share an employee with Rutland if that's the way we go. We would house the employee, we get a little better rate than insurance. So we're gonna house the employee, Rutland would pay us and we would pay the employee.
Okay, how about the economic development coordinator intermunicipal agreement?
So this is very similar to the agreement that we had previously with our Quabbin towns. It was grant funded through Hardwick. We still have the majority of that grant left. This year's budget, it's one of those no-brainer cuts that I was talking about, but town meeting authorized 7,000. The actual assessment would be 4,100, so we would cut the budget down there to realize that savings. 4,100 would get us the shared economic development coordinator, currently Todd Miller, who would also be taking on some of the goals of the planning board and starting to talk about regional planning in addition to economic development.
Okay.
As a bigger scope. This IMA would allow that coordination to happen.
Okay. So do we need any action on this now?
I would need approval to sign both IMAs if it's the board's pleasure.
Okay. Separate
Separate
votes, okay. Sounds good to me.
So you need a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to give Brian approval to sign the IMA for the assessing assistant.
Second the motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
And I'll make a motion to give Brian authority to sign the IMA for the economic development.
Second the motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes. Okay, well, we've finished new business there. If anyone would like to depart the meeting, we know we invited you for some specific purposes. You're welcome to stay, but we are getting into more of the nitty-gritties of stuff that isn't necessarily applicable to the schools and whatnot. So we thank you for coming. If you are going to exit, because we know you guys volunteer for so much as well. So we'll talk to you soon.
Take it easy, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good night.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, so old business. Start off with our Board of Selectmen goals and objectives.
So in your packets, we sent you last year's goals. Many of them obviously continue, so looking to see which goals you'd like to continue, if you'd like to add any more goals. So your goals set the tone for everyone else and help us with vision and staff purposing and goals. Right now, we met and we're collecting department goals, and similar to last year, I'll present you with goals by department.
All right, you mind if I just zip through these real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna zip through what our goals were last year. We're not gonna necessarily make any decisions tonight, but I think for the next meeting or two, we can sort of come up with what we've got. But I'll just sort of summarize and go through these, not necessarily verbatim. But the first one was prioritize road maintenance, continue to build momentum for major road repairs like 68 North, Town Center Project, Flag Road reconstruction. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. I think we've made it clear to everybody, specifically with our 5-year road plan, as well as furthering the efforts on the existing projects that are there, plus our efforts towards the override, which didn't pass, but maybe we'll try that again sometime for additional town roads. But I think we've done a pretty good job complying with what we wanted to there. The next one was developing a building upgrade plan acceptable to the town, addressing municipal space needs. I think we did that too. We put that as, don't stick your head in the sand sort of thing, which is, it's gonna be a need. It is a need. It's gonna be a need. It's always gonna be a need. So don't push it off to the next board to figure out. And so we've kept it on the table, I guess the best way to put it. Haven't necessarily made it our number one priority because we understand the limitations of the town and finances and all that, but we're definitely still on it. The next one was continue to promote Hubbardston as a strong and welcoming town where residents want to live and businesses want to invest. Modernize, taking advantage of new website platforms, social media if necessary. Ryan, you want to talk to this real quick?
Sure. So we've been focusing very heavily on social media in terms of special events, getting out town information. We think that's been a success. The new website I think has been very successful. We use it a lot. We put a lot of information up there and try and do that. We did start through
Hubbardston Living?
Hubbardston Living is an organic online newspaper that started as part of the Economic Development Committee, which has also been, we need a couple more people for the Economic Development Committee, but it has been very successful in reaching out to businesses. We think we're going to have a meet and greet in September with local businesses, starting to really push the idea of working with existing businesses to make them more interested in Hubbardston, maybe to invest even more than they already have, and to welcome others. And part of that with residents is making sure we're doing our part as a staff to increase our service levels and make commitments to people who are applying to live here and to work here.
Thank you. The next one was consider creative economic development strategies that leverage existing Hubbardston assets to solidify current businesses and attract new investments. Now, that's definitely sort of a fancy way of putting it when you're around the town of Hubbardston like this, I think. But, I don't think we've ignored it. I think Katie's got a lot to do with it in providing, what she's done with not just the Dinghy Dash to Come, but the Hubbardston Fair and all the other stuff that happens there. I don't know as far as solidifying current businesses and attracting new investments is tangible yet, but I think that, we've, done more than we've done in previous years. So I think that's all we can do is try to keep up with that. The next one was create a long-term strategy for larger infrastructure investments like water, sewer, and town-owned property. I don't know that we've done too much on that because of the reality of how much it costs to do that sort of thing. But I think as far as an overall grandeur plan, that's something that would be fantastic.
I
in the
think
future.
there might be a potential down on town-owned properties.
Yeah.
Like before I mentioned, maybe possibly logging some of it off, and it could be a recreation area after it's done. And we may have a couple of fields that are kind of lots that were hay fields previously that we could rent out, like we do at Mount Jeff.
Yep.
Maybe something we could look into.
Okay.
Leasing them out if they're not too far gone.
Right.
And then it could be also recreation area as well.
Yep. Okay, agreed. Next was develop a stronger working relationship with the Quabbin Regional School District. It's such a hard thing to do, because it turns into situations where it feels like it's us against them when it's just not. Sitting in these seats over here, we have to deal with the reality of the major effect every little blip on their budget does to us. And so even though it feels like it's an us against them sort of thing, and I can't tell you how much it felt like an us against them the other night, me sitting there. But that's fine. I mean, we just overall it's just it's such an impossible conversation because specifically all of us have kids in the district, for Christ, so it's nothing against that. It's just trying to find a balance, and when the balance has such massive parameters that swing things well outside of all parties' control, it's just such a difficult thing to manage. But that doesn't mean don't talk about it. It doesn't mean not have Ryan go there 6 times, however many times you've gone there to sort of do that and keep the conversation going.
And
So
Dan, also there's the possibility of improving the QRSD assessment process and maybe see what other regional schools do and how they, because we've defaulted into this agreement because that's what we didn't pick. I guess they didn't choose a different way to do it.
Yep.
And other regions, regional high schools are may have a different process that works better. That doesn't fluctuate as much.
I think you just basically stated one of the next goals we should have on for our fiscal year 2020 would be that Ryan talked about it before, that sort of thing just needs somebody to take the lead, whether that's us or not. I guess that's up for debate, but I think I have no problem having Hubbardston take the lead on that. But if other towns we'll have to see what their opinions are on it too. I know Ryan talked about OCAM potentially having us come in. Ed?
One thing that I always thought would be great is when the school is actually doing their budget and going through the budget process, that they invite the chair of each finance committee from each town so that they could be at their meetings and be able to get a better understanding of how they put the budget together and what they've done on the budget. And I think that would go a long way toward a trust factor, so that when they come back, it's not the first time they've seen it, and it's like, here's your number, you gotta do it. At least they might have some input from the finance chair standpoint into discussing it, so that you could make some progress at that level versus having to do it after the fact and then end up having more town meetings, which cost us $2,500 and things like that. So I don't know whether they would consider inviting the finance committees to come when they're doing the budget.
I think they would. I think the problem is it always comes back to the same thing, which is, well, we don't really know. And I don't mean to say it, cavalier like that, but that's what it comes down to, because things change so late compared to us needing to know so early, So I think if
Well, they don't
the
get the
party's
state
going to it
numbers.
knowing that, fine. I think you just got to sort of realize that shouldn't take over all the time. Because yes, we all know that that's the reality of things. But if it takes over right off the bat, it all goes sideways. So no, I
But it'd be nice to have our finance committee more involved with
Yeah.
65% of our budget.
yeah,
Absolutely.
agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one was there's only two more. Ensure that Curtis Recreational Field remains a town centerpiece, investing in its maintenance and improvement when necessary. Sure. I mean, I agree, right? I think didn't this Lions do some stuff up the
Yeah, they fixed up the
gazebo?
bandstand.
Bandstand, that's right. That's what we call it. This year, and I now that the last couple of years the DPW has taken over the mowing and all that. I think it looks in great shape all the time. So it's it's all of that. I think the main gripe people necessarily have is when you have some significant events, parking is quite the challenge. For Hubbardston Fair, I parked. I had all the kids get out in the same stride of the car so that nobody was getting out, facing the roadway from where we had to park. But it was good because so many people went, but it was a little tricky on parking.
The town had an opportunity to buy 3.4 acres on the back side of that field, and it didn't pass town meeting, but that probably was one of the most valuable things we could have done for the rec field, because you would have had all the parking you needed out there, 2 ways of accessing the whole thing. I don't know whether it would ever be available, but I think it was only, it could be done through CPA funds, which makes, it's like 50,000 or something like that, if I remember the number. But I don't know whether it's still available.
I don't know. First time you ever brought that up? No, I'm just kidding. It's almost it sounds like a door knocking effort on High Street was going to have to getting the word out canvas wise. That was a big problem in the first
The other
place.
thing that's so so prominent in our town is the cemetery, and they've done that's the best cemetery job that I've seen done in the last couple of years since the highway department took it over. It's great. But that fence, we took a look at that fence about 3 years ago, and we had about $12,000 in one of the cemetery funds, and they were gonna put that toward making it a vinyl fence the whole way down, because that one section looked so great.
Yep.
And the rest of it, they decided to
Paint it.
not bite the bullet and do the vinyl fence. And now 3 years later, after all that labor and cost,
Yep.
that fence needs to be basically removed.
Yeah,
and
that one
replaced with
vinyl
something.
section, that was actually donated from a lady in
Yeah.
town
Oh,
whose
yeah.
husband passed away.
Oh.
Yeah, she
So
paid
I was
that.
thinking one possibility could be if we could find the families of everybody who's in the cemeteries
Mhm.
and ask them to buy one panel. I don't know what that would cost, but if we could get them all to buy one panel, I know a fence guy in town that probably
That would install it for nothing. Yeah, me too.
probably be
For nothing.
able to do the job if it
Why
wasn't a
not?
conflict of interest.
No. Yeah. No. Okay. Understand.
And Dan, maybe we can reach out to the Parks Department and see if they have a wish list or anything that they need for the park that we could possibly help them out with. I did hear talk of another roof for events. Pat, was it Katie
I
that?
think the dugouts need new roofs, but I think Chris said they might address them, but the bandstand.
Oh, that's right. That needed a roof. But I thought they said they may want to put another structure there, and then we said we could
That's
use CPA money for that.
Yeah.
And then
if
there's
we
gonna-
reached out to them, find out what do they need, and is that isn't there a gap in the main entrance? There's a big
Yeah, there's
crack.
some big cracks. in
You know,
the track.
just get a checklist or whatever of what everything needs, maybe have DPW assess the paving if it needs sealing, or just to keep it from getting worse, you know, and then we can look at it and see what we can come up with.
Yep. And then they are, you know, there's gonna be an ice rink this winter, I think, right? So they've got they put that in there, it's gonna be cool. Alright. And then the last one was explore ways to increase town volunteerism and fill vacancies on town boards, committees. I feel like we've done a pretty good job in the last year. I think some of it just sort of happened, some of it came from your side, not necessarily our side. And then, you know, we have the little fair that we had before the town meeting, which was pretty well attended this year. And it feels like, you know, we've been gaining more than losing. Is that fair?
I don't think we have any openings on any of the major boards and committees right now.
All right.
After tonight's round. So.
Well, that's great. I mean, we had some massive voids beforehand, so it's nice to see that happening. So, all right, so that was the select board goals. So I guess, you know, in the near future, if we can come up with a few more, or not a few more, but further some of these, continue on, and then some additional ones so that we can have some additional stuff to strive for fiscal year 2020.
What's the status, what have we done for those Ragged Hill lots that, we should sell?
5
Yeah, well, I think there's 4 now, cause we swap one. But I think we should try to, I mean, the housing market seems to be pretty good, the real estate's moving.
Yep.
I don't know how we market those but.
Wasn't the revenue of those earmarked for something in particular?
Yeah.
There was affordable housing.
No, they were
At one point.
supposed to be sold, the money was to go back, I think it was something to do with the,
Senior?
$100,000 or something we came up with. But I mean, land's fairly valuable now, and those are nice house lots, so I think we should look into that and.
It'd probably be $55,000-$60,000 a piece.
I would think so.
That'd be
somewhere
great.
in that neighborhood.
Fiscal year 2020 goal.
So
Get it
I
back on the tax rolls.
I saw that at your last meeting. I have a couple updates from that, but basically I will look into that if you want me to. So I'm just looking for
Yes.
direction from the board.
Yeah.
That came from a resident a couple times, but I need that to come from the board and finance committee, and be glad to give you a report on the process and what would be involved and what we can do with it.
Okay.
I don't know if there was an issue with using a realtor or not.
Yeah, I don't
Would
know.
have to go out to bid or something, or
So I will have.
look into it.
I'm not prepared to answer that, but I'll
Yeah.
have a full report for you. Not in early August, but after that.
All right. Okay, so next is the town administrator goals and objectives. So you've put together a sort of self-assessment of, sort of give you the floor on how you want to present this, whether you want to go through it item by item or however you want to do it.
So I gave you, and could certainly go through it if you want, just an analysis of my goals. Just pop it up real quick. So we take them seriously as just indicators of where we should be putting our time and efforts. We don't have a ton of office hours, and so our staff, we try and just direct through goals. And I take mine very seriously and check in as much as possible. So, just go over some of the ones that are colorful. Economic development. So, focused a lot of energy this year on creating the economic development committee, getting that economic development coordinator and focusing that. If I had to say something that I wish I'd done better is taking that to the next level. So that's you'll see that in my goals for next year. Would like to meet with businesses monthly and get our economic development coordinator focused on creating that business list and really starting to build out that network. So although I think we did some foundational work this year, could definitely have a stronger year, and it'll be a strong goal in FY20. I didn't do a town administrator blog. I think we do enough communication, and I just didn't think it was worth the time that I would have to take in. But I do write articles for the Hubbardston Living.
Yep.
And pretty focused on social media outreach.
Who, yeah, I was just going through the Hubbardston Living website again today. Who administers all of that?
So that's Whitney. She's the chair of our economic development committee.
Yep.
She does that newspaper for free.
Okay.
And is pretty focused on trying to think of creative ways to get business into town. She's worth talking to for 20-30 minutes. She has a ton of ideas. Wants to bring in, what do you call that? Fruit stand? It's not a fruit stand.
Farmer's market.
She wants to bring in a farmer's market. Pretty. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. And create Airbnb destinations here, and just has some great ideas of ways to increase, you know, besides bringing in factories and industry and other type of things that are much longer term.
And we'll go over it in a bit, but you know, just looking at the website today and seeing, you know, for example, Lisa Durant, who's a realtor in town, and then looking down on item 6 here and seeing Lisa Durant Economic Development Committee, that's exactly what we want, right? So you've got, you know, engaging business on what is our, you know, platform for businesses website wise, and then getting them involved and want to be involved in furthering things in the town. So I think that's exactly how it's supposed to work.
We really want to stop saying, you know, it's hard to do, and just figure the things that we can do and do those well. Because it's just never going to be a city. This is not going to be a city, but it can be a lot of things.
Yep.
We should be focused on that.
Okay.
So then a couple more yellows here. Just department improvement plans. So we're going to focus on one way to improve every department, like sort of a bigger goal to focus on throughout the year when you're not doing day-to-day stuff. You'll see a report from me on that. I think that's going to be very successful, but didn't get to it this year. And then human resources will, once I get back and the budget's sort of finalized, human resources is going to be my number one goal, trying to solidify our processes and procedures. From a management standpoint, it is our biggest weakness.
Okay.
And then human resources again at the bottom. The other goals, I feel like we're accomplished to a level where I can say we could build on that. So just put that together for you so you could see what I'm focused on. And the main reason for showing this to you is to get your feedback on what you want me devoting my energy to. So the last thing I want to do is spend a lot of time on things that the board doesn't want me to.
Yeah, I think, you know, based on what we have on the green here, I've been through this in detail. You know, I think that our first sort of crack at it, your first crack at it, was worth a while, right? I mean, to get to a point where so much of it is green and all that stuff is valid. But I do want to say too is there are a number of those on there that don't necessarily have to continue because they were sort of establishing a certain way about things, right? Yes, they're going to happen because they're now part of standard operating procedure, but they're not necessarily goals anymore, I guess I would call them. So I think developing a new sort of set of them that does delete a few of these from the actual full-on goal thing is something that should be done for next year.
So then so the next document is I took sort of that analysis and created goals for FY20. Not looking for your approval on this, but definitely feedback. It can be publicly here, of course, but also by email or phone call,
Yep.
however you want to go over them. Just to rip through them quickly. Want to strengthen the relationship between the town staff and business, which is different than the boards and business. So I want to I'm committing to go to one business a month at least, at a minimum, conducting a survey and integrating with the EDC even more, the committee and the coordinator. Would like to do some office hours, or some coffee hours, or whatever you want to call them, in the senior center and hub diner or other areas. Just make that available. I don't think I'll be flooded with people wanting to speak, but if I'm there and committed to going at certain time frames, and if people don't want to come to town hall, I understand. So I'm trying to make myself more public. Commit to monthly outreach through the various channels you see there. We've been doing that, but we need to continue to do it because it's helping. It's helping get that information out. And then I'm gonna take a higher level focus. I've been really focused on staff and development of the staff. Been hearing some of the comments from the board. Want to focus on things like giving you reports on how to improve cell service, really looking at water and sewer infrastructure, the town pit and sale of town-owned lands. Get that information in front of you to see what you want to do with it.
Okay.
I'll take kind of a high level at first and bring it to you, and if it's worth going more, some of these projects would take up the majority of my time, so it's important to me that you're on board with me using it that way.
Okay.
Ryan, on community outreach, the school or even just the pickup in the afternoons is a good spot too to rub elbows with the community.
That's a good idea. The police do a good job of that in the morning too, so maybe joining them. The other day I thought to do it and I realized that school's out, so there you go.
You stand there by
Stretch your
yourself.
legs.
I talked, there he is again, just standing in the street. So
Yeah, our fearless leader.
so in terms of departments, those improvement plans I talked about, I'm committed to the schools. I want to make sure that we build some long-term planning and some strong relationships there. Got a huge ambitious IT upgrade plan that we're working right now. I'll have a report and some information for you on that. But we'll be replacing almost all the computers, and it's been 5 or 6 years for most of them. So it needs to be done, and we have the money now from town meeting. committed to quarterly meetings with department heads scheduled with specific focuses to create sort of a strategic vision approach to day to day. And then I've been to a lot of boards and committees. I'd like to make it to the rest of them this year if possible, even though the ones that don't meet all that often, just to see if they need anything and to make sure that they're communicating with us. In terms of human resources, I'm asking in this new iteration of the budget for HR consulting, but even if we don't get that, focusing my efforts on HR, especially in Q1, to make sure we're in compliance and make sure we're presenting our employees with everything they need. That includes updating their folders, creating welcome guide and committee for new hires, and this wage plan idea is taking a while to implement, but it should be part of the procedures. It's part of the charter and the human resources guide. So
and predictable performance reviews.
yes, tied to that idea of wages are consistent and fair across all, and tied to performance. Budget and finance, just when I say update all the financial policies, just go through them again annually with the finance team and make sure that they're on track. Most of that will just be yes, we've already approved that, but just updating it. I'd like to create targets for saving goals.
Hey, Ryan, can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
Ed's got a comment.
Yeah, on the financial policies, those are important to have in place, because I noticed this year we borrowed $100,000 from free cash to put into the operating budget. And one of the financial policies we used to have was that all free cash, anything we got from free cash, would go to capital stabilization, because we were always in need for monies for equipment and that. And there's a danger when you borrow $100,000 to put into the operating budget, because what happens if you don't have that free cash the following year, and now you've created a budget that relied on that $100,000. So that's one policy I'd like to have you take a look at.
Yeah, you just described why I haven't slept since March, so.
We know.
Yeah, that is a policy that is in place still, but the reliance on free cash goes back about half a decade now. Sometimes people call it reducing the tax rate, but that's
Half
the
a
same thing.
decade being
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
It's about when we started using free cash to supplement.
Well,
But we're trying to reduce
No,
it. It's a
we're-
long-term goal.
Right.
take a look at that. That's a dangerous. It can have a bad snapback.
Yeah, understood.
So you
Thank you.
also see the deficit we have, and that includes using free cash. So really the deficit's 158,000, but anyways.
Yep.
So savings goals. Savings are important for our bond rating and others. Want to make sure that's part of long-term planning. The CIPC, really want to get that going this year so that it becomes part of the sustainability planning for the budget, and improve our quarterly financial reports with our new accountant to make sure you're getting all the information you need to see that we're properly providing oversight to the financial process of the town. Infrastructure, update the 5-year plan, maintain the road maintenance plan, and execute it, and visit and document every piece of infrastructure this year. So you'll see I just went through the entire inventory this year. I want to touch all the bridges and culverts and make sure we know what's out there and what needs to be fixed.
Hey, while we're talking about this real quick, just because I can't remember if it's in one of these other items upcoming. If it is, then just stop me. But so we have some road work that's beginning,
Yes.
and that is Morgan Road milling,
Billing and reclamation, High Bridge, and Underwood.
Underwood. So our Chapter 90 monies are, which was part of the sort of original presentation of our 5-year plan for the roads, is happening now.
So that began on Thursday
Yep.
with the milling. They were supposed to start paving today with the weather, so
Yep.
it'll happen this week. We should be completed by next week or the end of the month.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
I think Underwood's just getting crack sealing,
It's chip sealing,
chip sealing.
Okay.
so it won't be a full pave. So those are my goals. That's a lot to throw at you. Wanted to review them with you. What I'm looking for is feedback at any point now in the future, by email, by phone, on, this is good, this could be better, don't do that, that's stupid, any of the things that you think, so that when I'm coming to you with stuff, it's stuff that you've preordained is something I should be focused on.
So our after our next meeting, not the 29th one, but after town meeting, our first September meeting, when is that? Do you have that offhand?
26th.
September 26th?
Oh, August 26th is your next meeting.
That's after town meeting?
Yes.
Okay, we're
so
gonna have-
town meeting will be Thursday. The following Monday is
Okay, we're probably still gonna have a lot to discuss there. What's the next meeting after that in September? Do you have that?
September 9th.
September 9th. So can we select September 9th to both have comments back to Ryan on his goals as well as any select board goals that we've got by then? All right with everyone? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we'll do that.
Dan, as far as the goals, I just wanted to ask, what your feeling is on a RFP for the town pit? Maybe like, just have someone give us an idea of what they can do with it. If there's any income that the town can derive from that, and maybe get a closure on it, you know, maybe a 5-year plan, remove what's left. If there's money for the town, and it could be reclaim the edges, you know, the slopes, and we wind up with a level pad. Would that be something we should?
I'm for it. You know, I mean, I agree. I think you just touched on it as far as all the other considerations that need to be made that have to do with, you know, whether it's planning board or ZBA or whatever else that has to go through. But I think we just have to be clear about that on our RFP submission to say.
It would have to abide by all
that stuff, right?
all our
So somebody
zoning.
who's serious who's done it before or whatever else is gonna have to obviously know what they're getting into and go from there. But no, right? Why not? It's
Yeah,
just-
if we could pull, you know, 50,000 a year out of it, you know, for 5 years or something, whatever the number is,
Yeah.
as far as material left there, and then we would wind up with a flat pad that the town could do something with later.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, it's a good idea.
Can I ask you a question, Ryan?
Yes.
So you had 2019 goals, right? And you just reported on them here. Is that the first time we talked about your goals since you presented them to them back in 2019?
Yes.
So there's no follow-up, there's no continuation, there's no updates, there's no input from the board? Continually, I mean, ongoing,
So
I mean,
there
I guess
wasn't-
what,
There wasn't last year, but I would love that.
yeah, I mean, and I think that's where I'm going, right? I
Sure.
think you got a commendable list, right? First of all, I think it's way too huge. I think you're spreading yourself way too thin. I think we can narrow this down a lot, and I think feedback is the key, right? We want to hear about what you're doing, you know, maybe every other month or something, right? I mean, that's what goals are for, to be maintained, to be monitored, to be reported on, to be changed if necessary, right, as things change. So, yeah, I'd love to, you know, I'd like to sit there. It can be one-on-one. You and I can get together sometime, and I can give you what I think my idea of goals are. Because, I mean, if you're doing this, great. You know, that's awesome. That's a commendable list. But I think it's way too much on your plate. I really do. I think it's just, you know, it's a big nut, and you're good. Believe me, I know you're good, but I just think you're setting yourself up here for a situation where you're going to spread yourself too thin, and you know, I think we should focus on. I mean, just hearing you talk about them, I know there's ones that you want to focus on, put a lot of deep dive into. So maybe we can narrow this down. You and I can get together.
You good?
All right, let's do it.
I work for you.
I'd like to do that. Let's set up a time.
Okay. Sounds good. Good luck, fellas.
And the rest of you too.
Okay. Anything else on select board or TA goals? Okay. So next would be the selectmen liaisons and appointments. So you have pleaded with us to deal with this, right? Is that the right way to put it?
At some point it would be helpful. So one of the symptoms I heard tonight with the school committee was just who do they talk to, who gets invited, and I think it's pretty easy to say, you know, this person wasn't told, this person was invited. The idea of liaisons is when something comes up that liaison goes to that board and says you should come here, or it directs me to do it, or however it needs to be. But the idea of committing to that list and sending it out to everyone and creating those communication channels might help some of these symptoms. And we've done, I think, an amazing job this year trying to get people on the same page. This is just another layer of that.
I think we need to, you know, at the risk of it's not an accusation by any means, but more face time the better with the school committee. I not gonna lie, I had a hard time getting recognized to speak. which, you know, at meetings here, you know, we're very fair. Not that they're not fair, but it's hard to, there's a process, it's hard to, if you're sort of in the minority and maybe not part of ongoing discussions, I guess is the better way to put it, and maybe not as informed as everybody else, it's hard to be heard. So I think, you know, doing whatever we can to make sure Hubbardston is familiar and comfortable to the committee is only going to help us, you know, our voice anyway. So that is something to work on for us.
And same, the finance committee is engaged and committed. I think they're going to become an even stronger voice than they already are. Planning board is same. They're setting goals. They're working on just the more each board is sending a rep to each other or communicating in a clear way.
Yep.
The faster we're going to do things like the town pit or other these big focuses that are going to require multi-board efforts and a ton of volunteerism.
Okay.
Just getting a budget passed is difficult. So.
Yeah. No, understood. So just to stay on that one for a minute, selectmen liaisons and appointments. Typically, what we did is we went item by item, which I don't think we want to do tonight. But we I don't see it in front of me here, but
We did that
went-
the last meeting,
Yeah.
when you
Lori.
weren't here.
oh,
We-
Lori had a list.
So
Okay.
is that all finalized?
it's all
or-
done.
Yeah, well,
No, the only thing I wanted to do, DPW.
Yeah.
You had it, and
Yeah.
we switched up a few
Have it.
things.
Okay.
Chris took everything Mike,
Yeah.
had.
Okay.
Yeah, I took everything Mike has.
the rest stayed the same, basically.
Pat selected one that he wanted, that he
Yeah.
took off of my plate,
Okay.
and you guys got left with what you had.
Did Lori
Yeah.
do that list?
Alright.
I
Okay.
just want to make sure it's final.
Yep.
And then there was no other input, and then we'll
Distribute.
formalize it.
All right. Great.
So those two changes, everything else stays.
Sounds good.
Can you email us a copy of the final list?
I will, and I'm gonna send it to all boards and committees as well. Hopefully they send it back too, right? So the finance committee should be sending a liaison here as
Sure.
well. Should go both ways.
Okay. So we have a couple of selectmen policies.
Yep, had these for a couple meetings now. Looking to see if we can set our policies for code of ethics for the board and then meeting rules. So these are living documents; they can continue to change, but just setting a flag in terms of how we run our meetings and code of ethics for the board of selectmen. These have been vetted with other towns and serve as an example for other boards and committees to do the same. One of the things we saw last year is do we use Robert's rules or do we do these other things? So setting these in place for longer term, especially when you have huge board turnovers, is very helpful for the staff. Because they can use it to train or to give information to new volunteers and elected officials.
I went through the code of ethics, and I thought it was very thorough, and it works for us as far as I could tell by looking at it. I had no complaints one way or the other.
No, me neither. Has everyone had a chance to maybe take a look at those, or we want to push it
Yeah.
off, or are we okay to, somebody want to make a motion to?
Well, if we're ready for that, I'll be happy to make a motion to accept
I'm good with
the
it.
I'm ready
selectmen,
for it.
the code of ethics.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
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 Aye.
Okay, unanimous? Okay, we're up to you again, Ryan, here, Town Administrator Report. Which we may have touched on a few of these.
We have, that's okay though. So, budget update, just kidding, we did that very strongly. The important part, just for the board's sake, is I just think going to town meeting with as much information as people are saying, and saying these are the decisions, is important, in addition to some direction from the board and the finance committee as to where we're going, so we can make some of the decisions about staff and other things. So if there's gonna be staff cuts or wholesale changes, that stuff can be settled. It would help the staff in terms of anxieties and other type of change things. So FY20 budget in vacancies. So you met Sarah today. Sarah, I think she's gonna do a great job. She looks like she's gonna be very good at this job, very committed to it. So we're hoping that she was the person for the job that we think she's gonna be.
Okay.
Veterans received their benefit payments in July. She's already meeting with some new clients, so there's gonna be very minimal disruption from Jared to Sarah. And as I told you, we're interviewing tomorrow for the assistant assessor position. Infrastructure, we talked about this, our road projects have begun. Additionally, the library roof project is done, they did their final walkthrough, we expect to make the final payment. I think that was just a great project, everyone should be really proud, including the town's folks who invested in it. I think it's good. There's some money left over that we'll likely be asking town meeting voters, with the board and the finance committee's approval to roll into capital stabilization to help fund future projects. Or to recover the monies from the feasibility study, we think it'll be about a wash.
Were there change orders?
There was two
There were two, and that came out of available funds
available funds. Yeah.
from the CPA allocation?
So we went through the state earmark,
Yeah.
then we went through the CPA, and now we're into the override funds. We wouldn't have been able to pay for the project itself
Without Ann?
or the change order without the override, but there's probably, I'm just making up numbers, but 50,000-ish left.
Okay.
So we went through about half the override.
Okay.
I could ask a question, it's not directly related to what you have under the infrastructure, but when does the Route 68 from Gardner to Hubbardston thing kick in?
Soon.
We
Cause I
expect
thought it
that-
was gonna be done this summer, wasn't it?
It's
Since they
set up
did-
work, flagging, that type of thing will begin in the fall,
Oh, in the fall,
and
okay.
then the real paving will start in the spring and be done likely
Oh.
early summer.
Okay, alright, thank
And
you.
Dan, where does that start specifically, at High Street, or the, down further?
High Street.
At High Street?
No, sorry, that got based on the extension of the town center project, they got moved up to the other side of the rec field, so that's gonna start at the other side of the rec
Okay.
field.
Mhm.
Alright, town inventories.
And just one other thing, it wouldn't happen unless it started on the other side of the rec field, cause they didn't have the funds to go any further this year. Okay,
And then 2023 for the town center, so looking at those three.
2021.
projects. 2021. It's very ambitious. So with the department heads, I completed a full inventory, I touched all the vehicles, buildings, computers, have it all documented. Believe it or not, this is part of the charter, and it is one of my main jobs is to keep the inventory. We were pretty good, but now we have something with pictures and a good report to feed some of these plans you've been asking for, like vehicle replacement plans, and things that can be available on the website. So we're going to use this database for a lot of different things, especially to inform the CIPC. So along that idea is once the CIPC gets going, we'll be looking to take them on a tour of the vehicles as well, so it's more informed than just, we need this or that. They're actually going to see it and hear from the department heads before making decisions.
Did you or have you contemplated putting on, like depreciation valuations and things like that on that?
So that's next, and it's required.
Yeah.
It's been in our audit, and it's part of the charter. So we made an agreement with Templeton that this would be one of the projects that they took on.
Yep.
So this will go, once we get all of the new financial software in place, all the new procedures, because it's been difficult for the last month. We'll focus on this, which is getting up to code with our capital.
Okay. Just press a button and hope it all calculates.
Yeah. It's simple. I'm going to be gone in Tajikistan, for those who've heard me alluding, for military service. One of the problems with the capital of Tajikistan is there's only flights every other day. So although I believe I'll be back the Monday after the 17th, it could be a variation of days, which is why I recommended the 22nd, because I may be back as late as the 20th. But hope to see you earlier than that.
Are you flying like commercial, or are you gonna be in the back of a cargo plane or something, or how do you get over there?
Yes.
Classified.
Military.
Many planes. I'll be more comfortable than it sounds. It's just part of my service obligation.
Gotcha.
So as part of that, I need to nominate at least one person to serve as someone who can sign warrants. So by charter, I sign all warrants for accounts payable and payroll. The board's done this before. We need to appoint someone to do that in my
I
absence.
did that last year, and I'd be happy to do it again if it's,
Sure. Make a motion to have Jeff sign the warrant.
Second it.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Thanks, Jeff.
So last, for employee recognition, we implemented our new Vadar software and switched accounting. For most organizations, one of those would be hard enough if you did it over a year, and we did it in 3 months. It hasn't gone fully smooth. There's been a lot of hiccups, training, and things like that. But in terms of the operation of the town and finance, nothing major to report. Just trying to get everyone on the same page and take advantage of our new employees. So I would like to thank Sandy, Kelly, Bobby, and Lori, who have all been cross-training and helping each other out. In addition to all of the employees really being patient as we implement new procedures. It sounds simple, but it's hard to go from one payroll process to another. In our larger departments, it's complicated. So everybody's been patient and thorough, and we will get through this transition, and no one will remember it in 6 months. So hoping to get there. They might still talk about it. So without our finance team, we really wouldn't be able to do anything. So I'd like to just thank them for what they do.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And have some upcoming topics in the report, just to see what I'm focused on and putting in front of you in the next few months.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Ryan. Now we have some appointments and resignations to go over.
Yes.
How do you want to go through these? What do we have? We have do we have some resignations here?
So
One.
there's
One resignation?
Handle that first.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
So there's a letter in your packet from Jacob. He was a part-time police officer
That's
here.
right, yep.
And he's moving up, got a position, full-time position. Very happy for him. So he's formally resigned. This resignation will allow us to hire another part-time police officer.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of part-time police officer Jacob Mozio.
Second
Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
So Peter Walker is a resident who came in. He wants to be involved. He's met a few people looking to get on both economic development and capital improvement. So I love the cross training there. Tom Collier, I think you guys know Tom.
Yep.
We just missed him. He needs to be reappointed to the Cable Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Lisa Durant, as you mentioned earlier, looking to get on Economic Development Committee. The main purpose of getting many people on there is they're having trouble getting a quorum, so we need to get more people there so they can start doing their work. Sarah, who you met tonight, be appointed as staff, veteran service officer. Philip Mike Chalafo for animal control officer, and Anthony Coppola for conservation commission.
Now,
Filling a lot of slots. It says
Are these just regular appointments that are in the motion, or do we have to account for?
They're just appointments.
just appointments.
Just, okay. Do we do them one at a time, or can we do them as a group?
I'd say you can do the group as read and written.
Okay, I'll make the motion then to accept the appointment list as presented.
I'll second that.
And real quick in discussion, you were saying something about ZBA member and ZBA associate?
So they've asked for members, we've advertised it, we're gonna re-advertise it again. They had to make a decision about the electronic sign in the town center and didn't have a quorum based off different conflicts of interest.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me address that a little bit.
Sure.
We're meeting again in 2 weeks, is our next meeting for the sign.
Oh, can you say who you are, please?
Oh, Scott Jansen is the chair of the ZBA.
Hi, Scott.
And the conflict that we're having is the petition for the sign is being brought forth by the Lions Club, of which I'm a member. In addition to that, one of the signs is going to be right out front here, and one of the abutters is Bill Holmans, who's also a member of the ZBA. That brings us down by 2 members. I have consulted with the state and the Ethics Commission, and I was advised that if I file a form with the appointing authority, which is you, the Board of Selectmen, and give the history, and that I feel as though I can remain impartial, that should cover me. But it's obviously up to you at the end of the day whether you want that to go forward or not. I understand from Bill Holmans, he's also consulted ethics. They have advised him the same, to fill out the same form, which he's gonna be sending to you.
Okay.
So it's really at the, I serve at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen. So if you advise that it's in the best interest of the town to excuse myself, I will do so. You just have to realize that when Bill Holmans excuses himself too, if that's the course of action we go, we won't have a quorum to be able to vote.
Okay, so I think I appreciate you presenting it like that. I don't think we're gonna consider whether there's a quorum or not as part of our evaluation. We're just gonna consider whether or not it's ethical or not. So I guess whatever documentation we receive, we'll take a look at and go from there. Is that fair?
Okay. So if we got it soon, we might be able to put it on the 29th.
Next meetings, yeah.
You're not gonna be there, right? Next
No,
month.
no.
The petition was filed 2 weeks ago, something like that. And they have to act within 100 days. And if they don't act within 100 days, then it automatically becomes approved. So there's a time frame involved in hoping to get somebody who would, fill that.
Well, would we have the paperwork before, next Monday?
I will get to Bill tonight to make sure he gets
Because
the paperwork in.
that's a possibility to put it on next Monday's meeting.
Yeah, and that would help with the time, but that time frame is true and pending, so.
Mm-hmm.
And we may have a member that's gonna apply to you to become a member of the ZBA,
Okay.
How often do you meet?
as needed.
So it's not a big demand for someone that wants to commit to it.
You know, it could be 5 times a year, it could be every 2 years.
Do we have a quorum for next Monday? Select board?
We had 3.
Okay.
Do we still have 3?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we're still in discussion. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so all those appointments are in
You're just
place?
super interested in the meeting.
It was interesting.
Yeah, it's all right. Committee updates, the task force, we were supposed to have one, in a couple of weeks. We pushed that off due to the fact, we actually pushed it off. I pushed it off with the co-chair, Dave Deschamps, prior to the school committee meeting that I went to last week that I, mentioned before. Anyway, we pushed it off because we all have some sort of bigger things to talk about here relative to the new assessments and 3 new, special town meetings and all that. So we pushed it off to September sometime. So I'll update everyone after that. And then Town Center Committee, again, last week we were supposed to have a meeting monthly, but I canceled it because we had no new information to present, and that's still working its way through I still get periodic updates, whether from our engineer or from the state reviewing the schedule. That's, just this sort of macro look at how things are progressing, and everyone's sort of doing their part, but it's, it's not a sprint. So anyway, okay, that's committee updates. Matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I don't have any. Anybody else want to bring something up that has come up throughout the course of this meeting that they want to discuss?
I do.
What do you got?
And I'll be quick. The library board of trustees and the library hired 2 library assistants. We just got their offer letters and wage authorizations today, which is why they weren't in the packet, but we do need to pay them for payroll. So one is Gabrielle Walker. The next is, she'll be hired at B1, which is the right classification for library assistant, step 1, it's $14.72, and then Michelle Colebrook. So they have begun and seem to be working out, and will be on their probation period, but looking to notify you and waive the notification period so we can pay these employees.
I would move then to waive the notification process for could you give me the names again?
Michelle Colebrook
Michelle Colebrook
and Gabriella Walker.
and Gabriella,
Gabrielle Walker.
Walker.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And just rapid updates, the communication tower for the dispatch,
Okay.
which came up at the last meeting, that paperwork is with after a long delay, they said they needed things from us. Honestly, it just started moving again. It went to their legal, their legal paperwork has it, and then they can start construction. That's the update I got today from dispatch. So we're hoping that actually goes up relatively soon. We talked about Ragged Hill. The land swap has been sitting with the land swap is town-owned land, the Vincents. It's been with the Vincents for a couple months now, and they haven't responded to our town council, so we continue to ping them, but we're waiting. So we've done our side, they need to do their side, and then it should be done. The bandstand roof should come from the parks to the capital planning committee, so we can get it on the long-term plan.
Okay.
And then we awarded Lead Group Inc. the salt contract for the year, just notifying you of that. Got a good price through the Oxford Consortium. Comparable, it's $1 more per ton than last year. So
Okay, thanks.
And
Anyone
that's
else?
it, treat it like last year.
Yes. Anything else?
Do you have any time frame where you'll be, appointing the, members of the planning board, the associate member?
That's next
and-
week,
Monday.
next Monday.
Next Monday?
Yeah,
Thanks.
28th.
29.
29th, yeah.
So they'll be here in joint, members of the finance committee with members here, everyone gets an equal vote.
Acting as a committee of the whole, right.
Okay, any other matters not reasonably anticipated? No? Public press, question and answer? Anybody else got anything out there?
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second that.
any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes, adjourn at